Okay, a few weeks ago I saw a video on YouTube by a creator named Rowby, and it was a Dead by Daylight killer tier list for Xbox One and PS4. Now, personally, I've sunken so much time in the Xbox version of Dead by Daylight, I feel like I kinda know a few things. See this video as a sort of critique for Rowby's tier list. Of course, everything in this video is opinion, and Rowby can have his opinion. First thing I'd like to show you is my tier list and Rowby's tier list. As you could have seen, there are some gigantic differences between C tier and A tier. One of my main points in this video will be an absolute ape brain move to put Legion in A tier and Freddy in C tier. This line of thinking is pretty stupid because you're comparing somebody like Freddy with excellent gin pressure to somebody like Trapper who could be countered by almost anything. I call this problem with the tier list the Virgin Legion versus the Chad Freddy. Alright, now that I got my opening out of the way, let's hop into the list. So as I said before, C through A are the worst offenders of the list, so I'll only be talking about those. First up in Rowby's tier list is Trapper in C tier. Here's a clip of Rowby describing killers who are in C tier and above.
Probably worth mentioning that any killer mentioned on here onward isn't terrible, just mediocre, but for the sake of having some fucking fun, I'm still going to belittle and insult each and every one of them.
Keep the word mediocre in mind when remembering the C tier. I'll be bringing this up later. Anyway, let's talk about Trapper. I feel like his placing for Trapper is actually pretty fair. You know, Trapper is countered by a lot, which brings him way down, of course. He's countered by toolboxes, maps, perks, comms. Trapper's by far biggest weakness is the fact that comms exist. Good survivors will coordinate with each other, so they disarm the traps almost instantly when placed. It really sucks that a literal paste eater could sniff out where a good Trapper places traps. Because of how much counterplay he has, it's kind of hard to put Trapper anywhere above C tier. So I'd say C tier is a good placing, so Rowby did good on this one.
Bruh.
Right after Trapper in C tier is Ghostface, where I feel like Rowby majorly fucked up, but I understand why he fucked up. A lot of players have the misconception to actually use Ghostface's stock ability, when in reality you really want to use his constant ability to be in Cloak. Unfortunately, Rowby is one of the players who tries to use Ghostface's useless stock ability to no avail. Let's get one thing straight. 90% of the time, stalking as Ghostface is completely useless and will only hurt you. The way you want to play Ghostface is you want to constantly be in Cloak, weaving in and out of chases to cause as much confusion as possible. This will really punish outpositioned survivors and injured survivors. This creates a sort of Ghostface pressure, where if you're not constantly making callouts, he's really hard to track. Ghostface can not only be really devastating to newer players, but especially older players who have come to expect killers to run certain tiles certain ways. If you mix up as Ghostface, you're sure to get at least a few. When playing Ghostface correctly, he's definitely an A tier killer. Huntress up next in C tier, and yet again to Rowby, another mediocre killer. Like Ghostface, I could sort of understand why Rowby put Huntress lower in the list, especially with the whole, stick controller thing. I however think that you could be a perfectly fine Huntress, and even a great Huntress, if you understand where to get your 100% guaranteed hatchets at vault locations, pallet locations, etc. Having good aim discipline and understanding what velocity her hatchets move at also helps a ton when playing her. A big gripe with this, however, is I don't get why he put Shitslinger so high. Like, I understand he did an explanation in his video of why he thinks Deathslinger's easier than Huntress, because the projectile's smaller and therefore you could aim it easier. However, I don't exactly buy into this, because I feel like if you're having trouble with Huntress, you're just gonna run into the same problems as Deathslinger. And just because you have trouble aiming things on the scenery and whatnot, doesn't mean you can't be a good Huntress. Huntress on console, in my opinion, is still A tier, and if not, B tier is a fair choice. But doing her bad and just putting her in C tier is kind of just a disgrace to her whole character. I don't want to be the guy to tell Rowby to get the gamer goop out of his controller, but dude, like, come on. Up next, Freddy Krueger in a very sad C tier. Now, in my opinion, this is literally the worst pick in the list, and anyone who has played more than 10 hours of Killer knows that this is false. Let's go over what Freddy Krueger has exactly. He has absolutely immaculate gin pressure. He could literally teleport anywhere he wants, making him almost always a presence anywhere on the map. Next up is he could end chases really fast with his snares. Placing them correctly does help, but as far as I know, you could literally just spam that shit, and it works. The last thing he has is time-wasting potential. Survivors never want to be in the dream state, so they're going to run across the map to get their clocks, or find other survivors. These three things are the things that make a great killer. If you've played anywhere above 10 to 15 hours, you'd know this. So what I don't understand is why Rowby placed him so low. In his video, he just seems to take these traits and throw them in the garbage. He definitely undervalues them. Now, just for the sake of this comparison, I suppose, I'm going to bring up the Virgin Legion versus the Chad Freddy once again. Now, let's remember, Rowby put Legion in A tier, way above Freddy. So, let's look at Legion's power exactly. Legion has a shitty Feral Frenzy ability, where you have the chance to hit somebody, and if you do, they must mend and they're injured. And if nobody else is around, fuck you, Legion, you don't get shit. Now, of course, from time to time, survivors will group up, but if they're good survivors, they're not going to group up. They're going to be doing 4 gens on the opposite side of the map, you know, far away from each other, and that's exactly what you don't want. And you might say, well, they're injured, they're going to be easier to, it only takes 1 hit to down them now. Well, there's a thing where good survivors could still waste your time if they're injured. There are survivors who could like waste your time for 40 seconds without even needing another hit to go down. And while that 40 seconds is ticking, bing, 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 3 gens have gone off. You just lost the game, dude. Rowby seems to think that Legion's power actually disables and wastes the survivor's time, which is further from the truth. The only time they're wasting is maybe the initial mend, or maybe like 2 or 3 of them got hit at the beginning. But guess what? They're not going to give you the chance to use your power again, because they realized, oh, he's the Legion. We just don't need to group up anymore. And, you know, you're giving them what you want. They want to be far away from you. They want to be working on different gens at the same time. You can't pressure all of that at once as Legion. You just can't. It is almost impossible. Legion is, and always will be, a survivor newbie killer. He kills noob survivors. That's just what he does. Comparing this to Freddy, Freddy deserves to go in A tier, or maybe even S tier. But A tier is fair for me. Putting him as low as C tier is one of the main problems with this list. Hag up next in C tier, and yet again, another poor choice by Rowby. He talks about how Hag has trouble following up on chases, but if you understand how survivors move, and you come to expect their movement, she could be absolutely devastating and end chases in seconds. Hag can straight up invalidate loops and windows if you just understand where to place them. Now, you can't exactly spam her traps willy-nilly, but once you get past that initial learning curve, she is definitely an A or S tier killer. Just because she's 110 doesn't mean she's C tier, Rowby. Next up in B tier is Pig. The reason I'm skipping both Demogorgon and Deathslinger is because I feel like those are okay placings for them. Demogorgon, of course, being a okay killer, and Deathslinger, I've already kind of explained why I think it's kind of weird that he's above Huntress. Rowby says he's biased in the video towards Pig, that he likes Pig a lot, but he seems to be under the false assumption that Pig actually causes stress towards survivors. Personally, the head cage that Pig uses throughout all of my time playing this, from day 1 of Dead by Daylight Xbox to current, I've only seen maybe 5 to 8 heads pop from a pig personally. Um, her traps are of course very RNG based. Perhaps your everyday asbestos-eating survivor would think that pig is stressful, but she's actually quite easy to kick around in a chase. She doesn't have any real chase winning moves. Her lunge is kind of handy, but it's more of a trick than a tool. She's an incredibly basic killer, and therefore I feel like a very fair placing for her would be C tier. I feel like Rowby definitely overestimates her, and considering that she is above people like Freddy and Huntress and other killers I've mentioned, it is very stupid that she's placed this high. I've already kind of explained why Legion isn't a good killer, but I'll kind of go more into that. His power promotes survivors splitting up, which as a killer you really don't want, because you don't want 4 men working on 4 generators. His power just being reliant on survivors being together is just bad, because smart survivors will kind of just fuck you over in that regard. Legion is... he's good against noobs, he's good against survivors who are overly altruistic, but then again, what killer isn't? And just because of that, he deserves to be around C tier.
Wicked sick.
Plague next to Legion in A tier, again above Freddy and Huntress and other killers I've mentioned before. I've always described Plague as, you don't understand how bad she is until you've played her. She seems like she has a great power on paper. She starts out with a free spew of damage. She has her vile purge or whatever that it slowly breaks survivors until they're all broken and they must cleanse, and if they cleanse you get to punch them hard. But it is honestly very hard for me to put my finger on why she's bad. It might be because the thing I've said, where survivors who are broken or injured or whatever could still waste your time. She is just an average killer. If her power basically, if they don't cleanse, is they're broken. That's their power. And you know, they might cough every once in a while. Now, of course, with Plague's new buff, it's understandable if you put her in B tier, but I put her in C tier. She is just a very lackluster killer. Last killer I'll be talking about is Michael Myers in A tier, and the reason I think he should be lower is Rowby seems to overestimate his killing potential in tier 3. Now, of course, it's a one-shot down and he has extendo lunge, plus he vaults faster. However, I honestly think that good survivors can loop a Michael for the entirety of the tier 3. His extendo lunge is nice, but it will get you some free downs, of course, but it's not substantial enough to, like, be loop defying. You're still gonna have to deal with those tough loops. You're still gonna have to deal with, you know, bad pallets, bad windows, etc. And if you lose that power, you basically spent almost 2 minutes doing bumfuck all, and you've pretty much lost the game. Closing, I'd like to say that Rowby's video is perfectly fine. He could have his opinion. I just strongly disagree with his placings. Another thing to note is Rowby's video was uploaded upon April 1st, and if it is a joke, then I'm literally an idiot, and if it isn't, then this video stands. I'd like to thank you for watching. This is the first time I've actually edited or done anything video-like, so I'm kind of just fumbling and bumbling around. If you have a different opinion, then feel free to comment in. I don't care. Thank you for watching this shitty video, and I'll make more in the future.